Hypothermia does not require a blizzard. It requires a wet jacket, a temperature drop to 50 degrees, and no fire. That is a Tuesday night in autumn in most of this country. And the person who dies from it almost always had fire-starting gear on them. They had matches, they had a lighter, they had a ferro rod they bought at an outdoor retailer 6 months ago and struck exactly once in their kitchen to confirm it produced a spark. What they did not have was a method that worked in the actual conditions that were trying to kill them. Subscribe to Disaster Ready HQ right now and never miss what keeps you alive when the situation gets real. Stay for number 7. It is the method most survival channels still recommend, and it is the one most likely to fail you at the exact moment your core temperature starts dropping. Here is what the fire-starting conversation almost always gets wrong. It focuses entirely on the ignition source, the lighter, the match, the rod, the spark, and ignition is the last 5% of the problem. The first 95% is fuel preparation, environmental awareness, and understanding why fire refuses to start in the conditions that make fire the most necessary. Wind, rain, wet wood, elevation, cold fingers that cannot grip or strike with any precision. These are not edge cases. These are the standard conditions of every real emergency. And most of the methods being sold and taught collapse completely the moment those conditions arrive. Number 1. Matches. Standard matches fail in 3 of the most common emergency conditions simultaneously. Moisture ruins the strike surface. Wind extinguishes the flame before it transfers to tinder. Cold hands cannot grip and strike with the pressure and angle required for reliable ignition. Waterproof matches solve the moisture problem and nothing else. They still require a functional strike surface, a sheltered ignition environment, and enough dexterity to execute the motion correctly. Most people's match discipline is also completely wrong. They hold the match at the wrong angle, they move it toward the tinder instead of holding the tinder to the flame, and they give up after 2 failed strikes and have now wasted 2 of the finite matches they are carrying. Matches are a fair-weather tool. In the conditions that demand fire, they are unreliable at the primary level. Number 2. Disposable butane lighters. A disposable lighter is one of the most useful fire-starting tools available under normal conditions. It is also one of the most temperature-sensitive. Butane liquefies at around 31 degrees Fahrenheit. In temperatures at or below freezing, the fuel in a standard disposable lighter will not vaporize reliably, and the flame either fails to sustain or never ignites at all. Cold hands compound the problem. Wet hands make it worse. A lighter stored in a warm chest pocket performs better than one clipped to the outside of a pack, but that difference disappears fast in sustained cold exposure. A windproof, refillable lighter rated for low-temperature operation is a completely different tool. A standard yellow disposable is not a survival lighter. It is a convenience lighter being asked to do work it was never designed for. Number 3. Ferrocerium rods without practice technique. The ferro rod is the correct foundational fire-starting tool for a survival kit. That statement comes with a condition that most recommendations skip entirely. It only performs that role if the person using it has developed actual muscle memory with it. A ferro rod produces a shower of sparks at approximately 3,000 degrees. Those sparks will ignite dry, fine tinder reliably and consistently. Under stress, with cold hands, in wind, in the dark, without practice, a ferro rod will produce sparks that land on nothing useful while your tinder blows away and your hands shake harder with each failed attempt. Technique is the product here, not the rod. If you have not practiced striking your specific rod onto your specific tinder material at least 30 times under progressively worse conditions, you do not know how to start a fire with a ferro rod. You know how to produce sparks. Number 4. Friction fire methods. Bow drills, hand drills, fire plows. These are legitimate fire-starting methods with a 10,000-year track record. They are also calorie-intensive, technique-dependent, humidity-sensitive, and require specific wood combinations that are not universally available. In a survival scenario where your core temperature is dropping, spending 40 minutes attempting a bow drill with damp wood while your fine motor control degrades is not a strategy. It is the last thing you do before you stop doing things. Friction fire belongs in a wilderness skills course as a foundational education in what fire actually requires. It does not belong in your primary or secondary fire starting plan unless you have practiced it to the point of consistent success in wet conditions almost nobody has. Number 5. Flint and steel. Traditional flint and steel is slower, requires more technique, and produces lower temperature sparks than a modern ferrocerium rod. There is no survival scenario where traditional flint and steel is the superior choice over a ferro rod that costs $4. The only reason it appears on survival lists is historical momentum. It belongs in the same category as friction fire, genuinely educational, tactically obsolete for anyone carrying modern alternatives. Number 6. Chemical fire starters without a dry fuel base. Hexamine tablets, fire paste, and solid fuel cubes are excellent tools for sustaining a flame once it is established. They are not a substitute for dry tinder, and they are not magic. Placing a hexamine tablet under a pile of wet wood and lighting it will produce a hot flame that burns for 8 to 12 minutes and transfers zero useful heat to saturated fuel. The combustion sequence for wood fire is non-negotiable. You need a dry tinder bundle to catch the initial flame, dry kindling to build it into something with heat mass, and then progressively larger fuel to sustain it. Chemical starters accelerate that process dramatically when the fuel chain is correctly prepared. Against wet wood alone, they are a slow, expensive way to produce smoke. Number 7. Any single method used without a prepared tinder bundle. This is the collapse point for almost every failed fire-starting attempt in a real emergency. The ignition source is blamed when the actual failure is the absence of a prepared, dry, fine tinder bundle that was ready before the first spark was ever produced. Cotton balls saturated with petroleum jelly cost almost nothing, weigh almost nothing, stored in a waterproof container will last years, and will catch and hold a flame in wind and light rain long enough to transfer it to prepared kindling. They ignite from a single spark. They burn for 3 to 4 minutes. They give you the time to build upward through your fuel chain without racing against a flame that is already dying. Every fire-starting kit that does not include a pre-made tinder solution is a kit that relies on finding dry natural tinder in conditions that are trying to make sure no dry natural tinder exists. Here is the principle underneath all 7 of these failures. Fire starting is not a gear problem, it is a preparation problem. The person who survives the cold night is not the one with the most expensive ignition tool. It is the one who prepared their tinder before they needed it, practiced their method before their hands were shaking, and built redundancy into their system before the single point of failure had the chance to fail. Preparation done in warmth and comfort is what you spend in the cold and the dark. You cannot borrow that preparation from the future. You either have it or you do not. Comment below and tell me, what is your current primary fire starting method, and have you ever tested it in rain or below freezing temperatures? I want to know how many people are carrying gear they have never actually stressed. Next video we are going into shelter, not the tarp you bought, the specific setup decisions that determine whether you wake up warm or do not wake up at all. That one is more important than most people realize. Subscribe so you are there when it drops.